About 5:20 p.m. yesterday, police and emergency services attended an address in Hull Road at West Pennant Hills. At that location, we made the horrific discovery of the bodies of a 15-year-old male and a 13-year-old female suffering from apparent gunshot wounds. An investigation was commenced into that homicide, but secondly also to track down the person responsible for that homicide. Early inquiries identified a 68-year-old male being sought as part of that investigation. In the early hours of this morning, a police operation was conducted in Harris Road at Normanhurst, where the body of a 68-year-old male was located. He was located deceased and suffering from a gunshot wound. At this stage, an extensive investigation into the circumstances is being conducted. Extensive range of support services are being provided to the family, which is having to go through this horrific experience of losing two children at the hand of another. We had a focus overnight to identify and find the person responsible for the homicide, and we've achieved that endeavour by locating a 68-year-old man deceased. Do you have any questions at this stage?
Can you tell us what's the relationship between the gunman and the children?
What we do know is the 15 and the 13-year-old are natural siblings. The 68-year-old male that was located at Normanhurst is the natural father of the two children.
Was the woman who was attended the scene, is she the natural mother of the children?
Yeah, a 36-year-old woman attended the scene suffering from significant shock, and I can't even imagine the stress and the heartache that she's going through, but she is the natural mother of the two children that were located inside the house. Again, our focus is on the investigation, acting in the strongest possible terms for the interests of the two children, to put the matter now well before the coroner.
Superintendent, can you tell us what sort of weapon was used in this?
What we do know is that two handguns were recovered from the scene at Normanhurst, and we're of the belief that they're the same weapons that were used in the commission of the offence at West Pennant Hills.
Does it appear that the shooting happened long before the mother turned up?
The timeframes are still subject of extensive investigation, but what we do know from the available information is that shortly before 5:20 p.m. yesterday afternoon, these two children were subject of horrific homicide. And what we do know from the information available to us, this was a planned activity on the part of the 68-year-old male, and we are of the belief that shortly thereafter he's attended the address at Normanhurst and taken his own life.
Do you know if the two handguns were licensed to him?
What we do know is that the 68-year-old male was the holder of a number of firearms. The two handguns located at the premises at Normanhurst were registered in his name.
Are you sure when he registered those handguns? Is it long term?
We understand that those handguns came into his possession lawfully earlier this year.
Who found the children?
The police and emergency services that were responding to the call located the children inside the house. Extensive range of support services are being provided not only to police but the ambulance officers who attended. As you can imagine, this is a most traumatic incident. Our heart goes out to the family and to the police that are responding.
Is he known to police previously?
68-year-old male has, we are aware of him, but he doesn't have an extensive history, and we don't have any what we would call contemporary information in recent years.
Do you know what his occupation was?
That's part of the inquiry. I'm not sure at this time.
Were there any AVOs in place?
There are no current AVOs that were in place at this time.
Were they separated, the mother and father?
What I can tell you is the mother resided at the West Pennant Hills address with the two children. The 68-year-old male did not reside at the address, has attended the address in order to commit this heinous crime.
Did he live at Normanhurst?
We understand that the Normanhurst address is where he resides.
And
Yes.
you said that, do you understand it was a targeted or planned attack? Can you elaborate on why you think that?
Bear in mind that our investigation started on the homicide of two children. In normal circumstances, there'd be very little information going out to the community, but what we can say is that the information we've gleaned in the past 15 hours, and I credit the police investigators from both the Ryde Police Area Command and the Homicide Squad in their diligence in what they've achieved in the last 15 hours, it leads me to believe that this is something that has been premeditated and planned.
Did they go straight to that Normanhurst property last night, or why did it take police so long to find this man or his body?
As you can appreciate, as these circumstances unfold, particularly with the trauma that the mother had been experiencing, to gain as much information as possible from a variety of sources. We had multiple lines of inquiry operating over the last 15 hours, and those inquiries needed to make sure that we consider the man to be armed, we consider him to be dangerous, and our approach needed to be with this due diligence and safety for the officers conducting the investigation. I'm well satisfied that the resources that were provided gave them the opportunity to achieve that level of diligence and safety and locate the person that we were looking for, that we believe is responsible for the homicide of 2 children.
What can you tell us about the handguns? What sort of handguns were they?
So at this stage, I don't have the full particulars of the handguns. I do know that there's information that suggests that they were quite powerful handguns. And they were located at the residence at Normanhurst.
You said he had a lot of guns, or a number of guns. Did you ever say how many?
So I'm not going to go into, there were a number of firearms that he had ownership and control over, and only 2 of them were located at Normanhurst. I'm well satisfied that the other firearms have been secured.
Were the couple married, and did the woman have full-time custody of the children?
So the exact circumstances of the relationship is still being confirmed. I do know it was a long-term relationship, and I do know that there were some custody hearings over the last 2 years.
How long had they been living apart for?
Again, it's subject to the investigation at this stage, and I can only speculate at this stage.
And do we know much about how, did the father have to break into the house, or would it have been unusual for him to come by and visit the children?
Again, the details about the nature of the relationship, particularly in recent times, and the level of access that the 68-year-old had to his children is subject of investigation. All of this information is now for a particular interest to the coroner.
Were there any
history of violence between him and his wife or the children?
There's an extensive review to be conducted into the nature of the relationship, those matters that had been reported and matters that may not have been reported.
Was there any signs of a struggle in the home?
Again, it's too early to actually get an appreciation of what actually took place at the premises. So to go back to what we do know is that tragically a 13 and a 15-year-old child have been subject of a homicide by a 68-year-old male.
Did they suffer multiple wounds?
dangerous weapons at the 68-year-old man's property in Normanhurst?
Both sites are still subject of examination, and we are working diligently to get a full appreciation of both environments and the nature of the activities that have taken place over recent times.
Superintendent, can you tell us if the children suffered multiple wounds?
So at this stage, I'm not prepared to go into the nature of the wounds. I can say that they suffered apparent gunshot wounds.
Was there a note left at the Normanhurst property or West Normanhurst property?
There's a range of inquiries that have been conducted in the activities leading up to what happened yesterday, and they'll be prepared for the coroner.
Contact with police in the first instance, was it neighbours that heard gunshots?
We benefited from a number of witnesses contacting police, and those people have been greatly assisting our investigation.
Was there anybody else in the home, or just the children?
My understanding at the time of the incident, the 2 children were at the home on their own.
Were there only 2 children between the couple?
I'm sorry?
Did they have any more children, or?
As there's the 68-year-old male was engaged over many years in different relationships, and so we're just trying to get an exact appreciation of his circumstances, but moreover the 13 and the 15-year-olds' dynamics. So our heart goes out to the family that are coming to terms with the death of these 2 young children.
What sort of negotiations did officers try to do with the man before they found him?
I'm not prepared to go into the activities of the police operation at this stage. I'm satisfied that the police operation was appropriate and achieved the result, locating the person responsible for the death of the 15 and the 13-year-old.
Do you believe that he had shot himself a short time afterwards, after the incident in West Pennant Hills?
On the available information to me, I'm satisfied that it was proximate to the death of the 15 and the 13-year-old.
Are you able to elaborate on how the mother was
I said we put some steps in place overnight, and the diligence of the commander at the Ryde Police Area Command to make sure that the family was suitably accommodated and had police support around her, and we'll be extending that support through the provision of some additional counselling and support services during the course of today.
You said earlier, when asked whether there'd been any history of violence between the mother and the father, that there'd been some reports and maybe some hadn't been reported. Do you mean that there have been certain incidents reported to police? Police were aware that there was violence?
Over an extended period of time, it was on the back of the question of whether this 68 was known to us. We have knowledge of this person, but it's not extensive, and there's nothing that's what I would say would be contemporary. So we are getting information from a variety of sources that are guiding the investigation for the interests of the coroner.
Did he have a criminal record?
I said I don't believe it's extensive, and if it was many years ago.
How difficult has this been for police working on this case?
So when you prepare yourself as a police officer, you prepare yourself to deal with the most tragic of circumstances, but nothing can prepare you to walk into a home and see 2 children in that state. And it's not just police, it's the ambulance officers that were responding as well. So there's no words that we can say to the family. It's only our diligence in the investigation for the coroner that will satisfy their interest. To the police that were involved, I managed to speak with some of them last night. They had a role to play last night and they did it admirably.
Does this family have the Asian background?
Not that I'm aware of. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.